Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the show Mindful Matters on Radio Al Ansar at 90.4 FM in Durban and 105.6 FM in Pietermaritzburg. A show that promises to provide an hour of inspiration, information and motivation with me, your host, Nazia Iram Osman. Please feel free to participate in the show and make it interactive so we can learn and inspire each other by sharing our stories. Please WhatsApp your questions, queries, feedback, comments, what else you want to see. The WhatsApp number is 060 904 1056. Saying it again, 060 904 1056. I'm looking forward to hearing from you soon. So the topic we're going to talk about today is the link between food and mood. Just think about it. Have you ever had a stressful day and the only thought in your mind was that I need some ice cream to make this better? Or you're feeling bored and listless and the way you choose to make time move is to binge on junk food? What about a heartbreak? Chocolate can be soothing, right? So reaching out for food to make yourself feel better can be described by a concept called emotional eating. It is a pattern of eating to satisfy emotional needs rather than to satisfy physical hunger. Occasionally using food as a pick-me-up isn't necessarily a bad thing, but when eating is your primary emotional coping mechanism, then you get stuck in an unhealthy cycle where the real feeling or problem is never addressed. Emotional hunger can't be filled with food. Eating may feel good in the moment, but the feelings that triggered that eating are still there. So even the food we crave is correlated to the feelings we are attempting to satiate. For example, chocolate is usually eaten when feeling alone or disappointed, especially with a loved one. So one of the reasons for this could be that chocolate contains a chemical that I cannot even say, but I'll call it EPA, which is the same chemical used in the brain that creates the feeling of romantic love. So when people are anxious or sad, they reach for dairy products to the likes of ice cream and milk. And milk products contain a chemical called tryptophan, which increases serotonin levels in the brain, which induces a feeling of calmness and relaxation. So looking at the link of food and mood can also be seen through psychopathology, in that if a person is clinically depressed, we generally see a change in appetite, weight loss or weight gain. One of the patterns found in people with eating disorders are difficulty in expressing, processing and coping with their emotions. This is called emotional avoidance. Emotional avoidance is described as actions that are intended to prevent an emotional response from occurring, such as fear, anger or sadness. People that usually struggle with eating disorders often turn to their eating disorder behavior in an unconscious effort to help themselves feel better and to cope with difficult emotions or life circumstances. For instance, many people who struggle with anorexia, their response when it comes to coping with feelings of anxiety, sadness or loneliness is to restrict their food. This may give them a false sense of control and specialness. For individuals with bulimia, binging and purging provides them a momentary feeling of comfort, control or relief. For people struggling with binge eating, eating often feels like an escape, comforting, calming or a way to numb out. To tell us more about this is our special guest today, Radha Joshi. Radha is a dietitian and we will discuss more about this link, foods to eat that can improve mood and effect of diet in our physical and emotional well-being. Welcome, Radha, to Mindful Matters.
Thank you, Naz. Assalamu alaikum to all the listeners and good afternoon. Thank you for having me here.
Okay, it's such a pleasure, Radha, and I'm really looking forward to today's show. Please could you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself in terms of interests, passions, experience, whatever you're comfortable with sharing.
Okay, so I'm a private practicing dietitian. I am currently practicing at the Gateway Virgin Active and I have been in this for about a year and a half now. And my passions are actually quite diverse, hey? They range from kids, adults, chronic diseases and the works. But the core of everything is the mindfulness. So it all boils down to the mindfulness, which is why I'm so excited about today's topic.
Okay, so Radha and I speak the same language because we're both great advocates of mindfulness. And I think mindful eating is something that we're going to discuss quite a bit in detail. But before we really start talking, because I have this habit of getting lost with time, let's take a short ad break and we will be back just after this. Welcome back to Mindful Matters. Before the break, we were speaking to Radha Joshi, the dietitian, about her interests and getting to know her a little bit more. So going on from there, Radha, please tell me what made you choose this field and what exactly does being a dietitian entail?
Okay, that's a very good question. So it's a funny story because I didn't know anything about dietetics. So back in the day, just like a normal teenage girl, I just, struggling with self-image and having these stressful thoughts about how you should look and what you should be, how you should eat. On the UKZN website, dietitian sounded so appealing. Okay. So I just ended up applying for it and knowing nothing about it. Once I got into it, it was something that I started to enjoy because it is something so simple. It started making me realize that something as simple as food affects so many aspects of your life, and then seeing near and dear ones actually being affected, like through life-threatening conditions, through food. It is something so unlikely that you would think of. So it's something that I have just grown to love. And with dietetics, it takes about 4 years of studying and a year of community service. So there's a lot of people have different ideas about dietitians, and they usually cringe at the fact that, okay, why must I see a dietitian? But there's a lot of studying, a lot of research, a lot of keeping up to things that go in it. So it's as simple as if you're sick, you go to a doctor. If you want to get your hair done, you go to a salon. So if you need nutritional advice, go to the expert, because we are there for a reason. So, that's the story about
how you got into it.
How I got into it, and I'm in it.
Okay, lovely. Look, it's so interesting for me because you said you saw the word dietitian and it just brought up this interest in you. And I was also like so curious about this. What would a person expect? What should they expect when they come to see you, or any dietitian for that matter? What does a session entail? Okay,
so basically a lot of people are scared when they hear the word dietitian because they directly, immediately think restriction, and this person is going to tell me no, they're going to tell me I can't live my life the way I want to live it. As a matter of fact, dietitians are there to actually help you through the process of whatever a nutritional disorder you have. We deal a lot with in-hospital patients as well. So depending on what condition you have in hospital, we tailor make your needs, your nutritional needs, to help you get out of that condition and decrease your length of stay in hospital. If you're coming, depending on what you're coming to the dietitian for, obviously your plan will be tailor-made for that. But it's a lot of support, it's a lot of emotional support, it's a process. It's just not as easy as, okay, I'm going to the dietitian, I want to get a diet. It's so much more to that. There's a relationship, there's rapport, there's so much. It becomes so emotional, but it's a beautiful experience.
Okay, love. Yeah. So it basically sounds like they have to trust you and you have to get that relationship going.
Exactly.
And talking about relationship, do you deal a lot with the relationship with food? I mean, in terms of questioning, what kind of questions?
Oh, 99.9% of my job is that, which is why, again, I was so excited about this. So it's not a coincidence that food and mood are just a letter apart, okay? There is so much of a link when it comes to food and mood. They have an effect on each other, and understanding how they interact will actually help in making sound decisions whenever you are eating. It's a very delicate relationship, food and mood, and it can go out of control if you do not look into it and you're not careful about it. And because of the stressful lives that we live these days, it's so easy to lose this connection. And that is a starting point. I mean, 95% of the patients that I do see, it's so much of emotional aspect more than the actual, okay, why are you eating this and why not? There's root causes which are to do with your mood, your behavior, because as diet changes or your eating habits change, your brain structure, your chemicals, the way you react to food, and your behavior changes. So it's very important. The food and mood link is phenomenal, actually, and a lot of people don't understand this. So most of my consults, the groundwork is the mindful eating, which is very important.
Okay. So, also now, I'm sorry, I'm quite ignorant in regards to a dietitian, but do you work with eating disorders, and what exactly would your role be in being part of the multidisciplinary team?
Definitely. In our country, actually, there is so much that happens under our nose and we don't even know about it. So I do work a lot with disordered eating, more on the one extreme, the overeating part of it, which leads to your obesity and so on. Under eating, yes, that is so much of a thing as well, but it's more the overeating that I, in my profession, deal with. A dietitian is actually one of the very vital person in the multidisciplinary team. And yes, there is a multidisciplinary team approach because you need different professionals to help cope with the individual. Sometimes you need a few, sometimes you need more than a few. That depends on the individual you're dealing with. So you could have a doctor, you could have a psychologist, you could have a dietitian, you could have a physio, you could have so many people involved depending on the condition you're dealing with. So when it comes to dietitians, we are not just people who are going to come and tell you what you're going to eat. Obviously, you have to establish a foundation of the root cause of the problem, and then we tailor make nutritional plans for the patient, and we progress the patient slowly, obviously with the help of all the other professionals in the team, and see how the patient responds to that and take it from there. And then there's also a lot of educational support. So we are the nutritional source of information for the carers, for the victim themselves, for the people around the person affected. We do a lot of support groups in terms of disordered eating and so on. So coming to a dietitian is your starting point, and then you just build on that relationship.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's good to know. I mean, I'm learning as you're speaking. And in your work, have you come across people with general medical conditions which may be due to certain, a lack of certain nutrients, but those can be mistaken for mood disorders, like a depression? So what I'm asking is, maybe there's something missing, yes. And like as a psychologist, I wouldn't be able to. I'll say, okay, no, this person meets the criteria for depression. Yeah. But you would go and investigate that and say, something's lacking here.
Definitely. Yeah. Okay, that's such a good question, because this is also something that's not spoken about all the time. But because food and mood are so linked, it so happens that the lack of the nutrients actually lead to that disordered mood, like your depression or your anxiety, because a lot of the nutrients, remember, every nutrient out there has a role to play in your body. Lacking some of it, remember, if it's got something to do with, most of them have something to do with brain cognitive function, then it's definitely going to affect your mood. And a lot of people don't understand this, and they actually go and get a whole lot of it. It actually spirals down. It's a downward spiral, not a vicious cycle. Because a vicious cycle means that you will go back to square one at some point. A downward spiral is you will lose everything so quickly, and it's so hard to get back up. So getting back to the whole nutrient lacking and the moods and so on. So I'll give you a simple example. Like something that's very common is iron deficiency in our country. I was
just going to bring that up. Yeah, I think Indian women are known for iron deficiency.
Exactly. Indian women, kids, elderly, pregnant women. It ranges from a whole lot of people. So that's a very common disorder in our country, and not only in our country. I see it in so many other countries, but we all are ignorant about it. So the first thing we want to do is just go and get iron supplements instead of actually thinking about why we have this deficiency. So basically iron, let me tell you what basically iron does, right? So iron transports oxygen in your body. If you have a lack of iron for a long period of time, you're exposing yourself to something called iron deficiency anemia. Okay? Once you expose yourself to that, that is going to affect everything else in your body. Your mood, your hormones, your enzymes, reactions in your body, everything. So direct link to depression, anxiety, and so on. It's the same thing with something like vitamin D. If you go to places that are away from the equator. Remember, those people don't get enough vitamin D. Okay, you need vitamin D. It helps with obviously cognitive function and so many other processes in your body. People that live more away from the equator, their moods are so much more different. A simple thing like sun. Because your source of vitamin D is the sun.
And because there's a thing called SAD, where if you don't get enough sunlight, it actually puts you into a negative mood. And that would be because of the vitamin D, right?
Yes. So there's a direct link. Then you have your vitamin B12. You have so many minerals that are affected, and they affect your mood as well. So that's why having a background knowledge of the different foods and how that affects your mood is so important.
Okay. So I guess what you're saying is, before we rush to put a person on psychotropic meds, we should always just screen and see if there's any deficiencies which could be mistaken or are the cause of this low mood.
Definitely. Usually when I get clients coming to me, my history is a lot to do with how they feel. Simple things like you can pick up from clinical signs as well, like maybe brittle hair, breaking hair, spoon-shaped nails, fatigue. Fatigue is something so common, and people just say, okay, it's stress, so because I don't have time to sleep. But all of that is affected. It's all interrelated.
Right.
So through clinical signs you can pick up, okay, maybe you might have a deficiency, or
Let's just rule that out first.
Let's just rule that out first, and it's not that hard to actually pick up whether it's a deficiency or not. So a lot of people are like, yeah, but I just need to take supplements and I'll be okay. So that also has its own pros and cons. So that's not your only line of treatment. There's so many other things that you have to do before just going onto any supplement. Because remember, supplements out there, you also need to know which ones are the correct ones. So it's not as easy as just diagnose yourself and go and buy
Go
whatever.
and get it, over the shelf.
Over the shelf, yeah. So the clinical signs, you can definitely pick up deficiencies from that, and then you can send them for a blood test.
Okay. So, I'm picking up on anemia again because I think, and I know I said Indian woman, you said no, it's broader than that, but I know speaking or discoursing with others, I've picked up, or it's been said that as the elderly or children, Indian women are quite prone to it. And one of the reasons someone gave me, and I want you to tell me if this is true or not, is because, well, back in the day, I'm assuming, because I don't know how to make roti, but apparently they used to eat a lot of roti or something like that, where something was lacking. Now, I'm not sure if you can blame it on roti or whether there's maybe eating too many vegetables and not eating red meat. I'm not sure. Maybe you can clarify that.
Okay, so more than that, if you're talking about back in the day, for me, that's more about the culture of eating. Remember, back in the day, it was women eating last. Okay, so you're basically eating leftovers, or you're not eating enough. That's where malnutrition started kicking in, especially when it came to married women.
So it's not just about anemia. It was malnutrition.
It was malnutrition. And even when it comes to something simple like, okay, not eating rotis and so on, remember, there's no one particular food that's going to only enhance your iron. It's a combination of things. Remember, you need certain foods to help the absorption of certain other nutrients. Okay, so they all work in combination, which brings me to my next point of what people do. They isolate foods and they isolate diets. So they think that just having excessive amounts of a certain something is going to help them, which is incorrect, because it's all about balance. It's all about moderation. So back in the day, going back to that, back in the day, they shouldn't eat enough, or they shouldn't eat enough of the right foods, which is where these iron deficiencies kicked in.
Okay. So what would be the right foods? What would someone who's low on iron, what should they have to help them, make them feel better?
Okay. So you have two types of iron. You have your heme iron and you have your non-heme iron. So your heme iron comes basically more from your animal sources. Your non-heme iron comes from your veg sources. So obviously vegetarians, vegans are also prone to iron deficiency. So they usually, if you have a deficiency, you pick up a deficiency, you correct it through supplementing, and you maintain it through diet. So when it comes to diet, you're looking at things like your green leafy vegetables, your meats, your dairy products, full cream dairy products. You're looking at your nuts, your seeds, your veg oils, all of that, green leafy veggies and even green veggies. But these are very overrated. Especially in our country, a lot of the times people are just focused on having these green leafy veggies without realizing that it's actually not that organic. So even that matters. So making
those
sure
people living on salads, be warned.
Yeah. So
it has to be organic.
It has to be organic, and more than organic, it has to be seasonal, which is what we fail. So we are just running in this rat race thinking that, okay, this country has a very amazing diet for that population. So just adapting that is not...
Just adopt it here,
Exactly.
not taking into account our environment and culture and all the rest.
Our geographical location, our genes, our stresses, our lifestyle is very different to some other population. So you cannot just blindly adapt something. Yes, you can use the principle, but it's obviously sticking to what works for your population and your country. So that's also very important, which is where the balance comes in. I'll get to this a little later. I will talk to you about a term that people in India use, and it's something that is so simple, but it's something that we all could follow.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm listening to you, and I know, they say your perception of things would sort of filter the kind of information that you find interesting. And I can't stop myself saying, I think, guys, listen, buy vegetables from the auntie on the road or the guy selling at the robots, because you're getting the seasonal fruit that's probably grown, hopefully, within the area.
Yes.
And the other thing is, and especially for our male counterparts out there, like, I think even today, especially the women that, the ones that are staying at home and are housewives, are also the ones that are working, we always make it a habit of making sure everybody is fed first. So I don't think it's at the point of malnutrition. I'm sure my husband's rolling his eyes. No, it wouldn't be that point. But taking care of yourself, we care of the caregiver, taking care of yourself, eating the right foods, making sure there's enough for you.
Yes.
So you don't end up that anemic woman,
usually people look at food as something that it's like a reward or it's a punishment. It shouldn't be that, because food is there to nourish you. It's there to fuel you. It's not there to punish you. Neither is it a reward. So usually when it's just human nature, when you're feeling happy or you're feeling sad, you reach out.
We celebrate through food.
We celebrate through food, which isn't a bad thing. It's what food are you celebrating with and how much.
Okay, so Radha, I can't celebrate through salads. So I don't think that's going to happen.
That's fine. It's fine, because once in a while it's okay. That's where the problem comes in. When you start battling your blues through bad food, okay? Remember, even if you are maintaining a healthy lifestyle or healthy eating habits, it's very, very normal to have cheat meals, or it's very, very normal to have temptations to eat the wrong foods, the junk foods, okay? Your body is wired like that. I mean, everyone goes through that at some point or the other. The problem comes in when you lose control, when you just every day you are stress eating. Remember, stress is something that we deal with on a daily basis. So if you're using bad foods to deal with that on a daily basis, your body just adapts to that, and that becomes normal. So instead of fighting the cause, we are just fighting the symptoms. So on a daily, so that's how overeating kicks in. That's how undereating also kicks in. That's how eating disorders also kick in. So you have to be very mindful. It's about swinging back. It's about, okay, I had a bad day today. So you don't compensate by overtraining or by starving or by feasting. You just make sure that you swing back into routine in time.
So I think what you're saying, it takes a lot of discipline and consciousness on the part of the person that, okay, you have to really reflect that and be aware, I'm having a bad day, and what are my usual habits? Am I actually reaching out for that packet of chips when I'm having that bad day?
Yes.
So I think, being aware and reflecting is such a huge part of it.
It is the core of everything. If you are not aware about your surroundings, you will not be aware about the food you eat, and that will become a habit, because that will start affecting every single other meal. It's like, that's the downward spiral I'm talking about. If you have a bad meal, if you have an excessively bad meal, all that does is make you want more of the bad thing. That's how your body becomes used to that, and that becomes your new normal. So you won't even realize that you are just losing control of yourself and your body and what your body is doing, how your body is reacting, and then you go to the dietitian as a last resort, like the final resort after Mr. Google and a million other things.
It's Dr. Google here, right?
Oh, sorry, my bad, Dr. Google. So the mindfulness is your cornerstone to all of this. Yeah.
And being a psychologist, also when I'm explaining anxiety, I'm just shifting the focus a bit here. When I'm explaining anxiety, and I get lots of nods from my patients that there is a link. There's always some sort of tummy upset, or they'll have IBS, or there'll be some ailment around the tummy and the gut. So I'm hoping to get this information from you. What is the relationship between the gut and just say mood or anxiety?
Okay, so basically there's something called the gut-brain barrier. Okay, so you have different bacteria that colonize your gut. I'm sure people know this, they've heard of this. You have the good bacteria, you have the bad bacteria. If you have an imbalance of the bad bacteria being dominating your gut, that has a direct link to your chemical structure of your brain and direct link to your behavior and ultimately your mood. So that is the reason why food choices, the surrounding you're eating in, the timing of your meals, the music, the company, what's in front of you, how much you're eating, how distracted you are while you're eating. So it boils down to eating in peace, not in pieces. So you're not all over the show when you're eating. You are eating in a calm state. Like most of the time, what I find, we eat to a point where we are so stuffed and we cannot move, and then we lose that signal from our bodies, or that cue from our bodies to tell us that, stop, just listen and listen to me and just stop when you're full. But we don't do that. We tell our bodies what we need, because there's so many diets out there, there's so many fads out there to say that you need to eat certain calories, you need to eat these foods because these foods are better than that. And unfortunately, we're slowly moving so far away from our traditional roots of eating the types of foods we used to eat when we were growing up, the way we used to eat. It's more like embarrassing for people to eat traditionally now than before. But if you think about it, back in the day, we were so much more in touch with our bodies and our cues.
Right. And it wasn't rushed, and you were listening to your body. And I think that's something that you're emphasizing on. We're not listening to our body anymore.
Exactly, which is why we have a bad relationship with food, which is where everything starts. If you have a bad relationship with food, that affects everything else. Then you have a bad relationship with your body. You start body shaming yourself, and you start punishing your body for stupid things. You start punishing your body and telling yourself to be a certain weight, telling yourself to fit into those skinny jeans that you wore 10 years ago. So yeah, it's all part and parcel of this process.
Right. So we have some messages and queries that have come in. We will deal with that after this short ad break. Hey, welcome back to Mindful Matters, where we're having this very interesting discussion with our dietitian, Radha Joshi. Just before we left off, we were talking about food and mood, and a query has come in which just correlates with that. So the brother asks, what are the feel-good foods to keep you happy when you are feeling down?
Okay, so usually the body will think that your feel-good foods, we reach out for foods that are high in fats, sugars that are processed. Maybe in the moment that will make you feel good, but that is not your solution, because that is actually doing more damage than good. So your feel-good foods are all the foods that are natural, okay? So I'm going to list a few things that you can keep in mind, but obviously if you want to know like exactly in how much and all of that, you have to speak to a professional.
A dietitian,
but yes,
come in
a dietitian, yes, to be tailored to your own needs. Okay, so we have things like your omega-3 fatty acids that are vital. You need them. A lot of people lack them, especially again the vegetarians. So your omega-3s have been linked to giving you good mood. It's a thing. It also helps with good skin, good hair, good immune system, and so on. Okay, so we have omega-3s found in fish, your fatty fish, your flax seeds for those that are vegetarian, and your nut oils. Then also your selenium-rich foods. Okay, so selenium helps with the boosting of serotonin in your body. Okay, So selenium-rich foods will be your Brazil nuts, your oysters, tuna, clams, sardines, freshwater fish. Remember, freshwater fish is very important. Sunflower seeds, eggs. These are all natural foods. If you think about it, the foods that I'm listing are not the packaged, the processed, the convenient, the ready-to-eat, the ready-to-heat foods, because those are the ones that are filled with all your preservatives, your nitrates, your salts that you don't need too much of in your body. Okay. Then you have your a lot of people think, I have to touch on this is something so important. A lot of people move away from carbs. Okay. There's something you mentioned earlier on in the conversation about tryptophan. So tryptophan is basically an amino acid which again helps with boosting your serotonin level. Serotonin is your feel-good hormone.
Right.
Okay.
And it has a huge implication in depression and anxiety.
Exactly. So if you have now, tryptophan is something that will help boost your serotonin. But with tryptophan, it's not about eating tryptophan-rich foods. It's about eating the good carbohydrates, which help in releasing or in the tryptophan being more available. So it's actually not a direct link, if that makes sense. Okay? So you need to eat more of your whole grains, your fruits, your vegetables, your beans, your lentils, your nuts, and your seeds in order to get the tryptophan working.
Okay.
Just to put it in layman's terms.
Okay, right, I get that. And there is another query, and I think I'm so happy that the brothers are participating. And here's another question. If there is a diet, please can you help the brother with a diet that helps with detoxing to help you stop smoking? This is an interesting one. I didn't even think about it. I normally think when they say people stop smoking, they eat a lot.
Okay, so that's a very interesting one. So first and foremost, there's no such a thing as detox diets. That's a fad because anything that's not sustainable, detox diets are very short-lived, okay? So you're putting your body through torture for a short period of time and then you're swinging back worse than what you were. Okay, so
there's no such thing as a detox diet.
No such thing. It's a fad. Okay, so it downward spirals down to a fad. It's not a vicious cycle. It becomes a fad. Okay, which is something that's not going to help you. So when it comes to smoking, obviously this is out of scope to talk about here. So that would be something that I would meet the person in person to talk about.
So you tailor something more specific for them, and it wouldn't just be about the smoking. It would be, what is the smoking doing for you? What else can we give you to help with your...
Because remember, even with the smoking, you need to figure out what is causing the smoking. When are you smoking? What times are you smoking? Is it stress smoking or is it straight after a meal? So there's so much more to it than just saying, okay, no, you need to stop smoking.
And it's like, I know it's getting totally off, but I know even with smoking, some people say it's almost where before they take that out puff, they breathe in. So it could be just addiction to breathing,
Exactly.
So there's many, I hear you, there are many reasons around smoking, and just like eating mindfully.
Yes.
Smoking, I can't smoke mindfully, but there are probably many reasons behind that. So emotional smoking, that's a possible topic at some point. And since we're using, the show's name is Mindful Matters, we're speaking about emotional eating, but the opposite of emotional eating is mindful eating. And can you tell us a little bit about how can we eat more mindfully?
Okay, so remember I spoke about the Indian word that I wanted to tell you about. So there's a Sanskrit word called mitahar. I've read this time and time again, and I just believe it day in, day out. It's basically eating with all your senses, eating healthy, local, and eating in peace. Remember I said peace, not in pieces. So you're not distracted, you're not eating in front of a TV, you're not using your cell phone while you're eating, you're not reading a book while you're eating. That is when you can distinguish the right quantity. The right quantity is not what your doctor, your dietitian, your trainer tells you. It's what your stomach tells you. Okay, so it's establishing that relationship obviously with food and also becoming more in tune with your stomach. So there's something I usually tell my patients to do. It's called the rule of Uno. Okay, so I'm sure everyone has heard of the game Uno. All right, so it's about saying Uno when you're just about full. Okay, otherwise you lose the battle. So if you're eating to a point, like I said, where you are so stuffed and you can't move, that's going to mess your cues up. If you are stopping when you're just about full, that will settle in the cues for your next meal, which means that you won't overcompensate for your next meal. You will stop when you're full. That will set the pace for your entire day. Remember, people from different regions and different cultures, different backgrounds, the time they say uno is different. Everybody's timings are different. Appetite, your genes, the time of day, your mood, like I said, all of that plays a role. Another tip is if you keep a lot of the high fatty foods, the junk foods basically inside, that is what you're going to reach for. Okay?
So don't buy it, so you won't eat it.
Don't buy it. And if it's there was actually a study done, I was reading this recently, it's so interesting. They had a plate of chocolates left like 6 meters away, and they had a plate of chocolates for a group close to them. The people who were 6 meters away actually changed the decision because they had to walk to that.
Okay. So make it inconvenient for yourself.
For yourself.
That's a very good tip.
Yes, and also use smaller utensils, okay? So the smaller your plate, fill it up, the more satisfied you're eating with your eyes, not with your stomach.
You're tricking your mind.
You're tricking your mind,
very
basically.
Good tips here, guys.
Yeah. So those are the simple things. Also, drinking water in between helps, because sometimes you feel that you're actually hungry when you're actually thirsty. Okay? So drinking the water will actually calm you down and will help you reason with, okay, how much do I need to eat?
Right.
So these are the simple tips that we usually use when it comes to the mindful eating. But the environment is definitely important.
Right. I'm glad, because everything you're saying is coming into my thought of the day, but we'll get to that. But thank you so much for coming onto this show and teaching us so much about mindful eating.
Thank you so much for having me. It was such an honor. The time just flew.
As always, yes, yeah. Time just goes so quickly. And to round up today, I will leave you with the sunnah of our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who stressed the practice of eating in moderation to prevent sickness and disease, which is supported by science today, as we heard. And a lot of what Radha has said, I'm so glad, also comes up in the final thought of the day. So the Islamic practice of eating in moderation suggests your stomach should be filled by 1/3 food, 1/3 liquid, and 1/3 breath. Within the past 20 years, studies have shown that mindful eating can help you reduce overeating and binge eating, lose weight and reduce BMI, cope with eating problems, and reduce anxious thoughts about your body and food. So part of mindful eating is eating slowly with gratitude. It is narrated that the Prophet Muhammad was a strong advocate of eating slowly to help with the digestion process. And as you said, sometimes we don't know when our body is full. So we're supposed to stop just before we think we're full. And science says that it takes about 20 minutes for our body to tell our brain that we are full. So slow eating helps digest our foods, because efficiently chewed food also helps the digestion process and doesn't require too much energy for the stomach or intestine. So I think overall what we're saying is eat consciously, mindfully, slowly, with gratitude. And if you eat each bite like it's your first or last, I think this would be easy to attain. Assalamu alaikum, and I hope this show lived up to its promise to inspire, educate, and motivate. And remember, be mindful, be kind, and enjoy the rest of your day.